Posts up, very controversial on a pornographic website. He says he didn't do it. Former President Donald Trump spoke yesterday in North Carolina, didn't mention him, has not dropped his endorsement. Senator, do you think that former President Trump should drop his endorsement of Mark Robinson?
I think what's going to happen here is that he deserves a chance to defend himself, Mark Robinson. The charges are beyond unnerving. If they're true, he's unfit to serve for office. If they're not true, he has the best lawsuit in the history of the country for libel. He's claiming they were artificially created and that CNN passed it along to be true. Has NBC confirmed this?
Not yet. We're all looking into it.
Well, so what I would do if I were him, I would hire me the best lawyer I could find. I'd sue the hell out of CNN because what they're saying about him is just unbelievable. Now, he needs to do more, in my view. He has a right to defend himself. He has an obligation to defend himself. This is hanging over his campaign. Trump won in 2016 and 2020 when the governor candidate lost both times. I don't think this hurts Trump, but as to Robinson, he's a political zombie if he does not offer a defense to this that's credible.
Senator, I want to ask you about something that Vice President Kamala Harris said this week. She was talking about gun ownership with Oprah Winfrey. She said, quote, "If somebody breaks into my house, they're going to get shot." You, Senator, are a gun owner. As the leader of a party that prides itself on advocating for gun safety, was it responsible for Vice President Harris to make those comments?
Absolutely. I think the vast majority of Americans, if you had somebody breaking into your house that might be there to harm you, you probably have the right to shoot them. And I think that's a vast majority of Americans would agree with that.
I'm not sure how we deal with this situation. Lindsey Graham has finally admitted, it's taken a while, that he, how do I put this? He's got no balls. Literally, zero testosterone. He is witless, scared to say anything which may resemble truth or facts, scared to step out of line. You can call him watermelon spine. Something has happened. Let's compare John Fetterman and Lindsey Graham. They were both on Meet the Press. Fetterman was asked a couple of difficult questions, didn't shy away from answering. Whether it was guns and then nonsense going on, in Springfield, Ohio, about the Haitians, literally gave straightforward answers. Whereas Lindsey Graham is embarrassing, feckless, useless, groveler, brown, it goes on and on and on. Lindsey Graham, I'm amazed Lindsey Graham can ask a basic question such as, why have you got certain stories about you on social media that you never comment about publicly? But no, I'm shading Lindsey Graham, and I shouldn't do that because he does know how to beat around the bushes. Take the simple situation of Mark Robinson. Simple situation, Mark Robinson, a confirmed black Nazi. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. But Lindsey Graham, it's embarrassing. Somebody really should have a word in Lindsey Graham's ear that he's making himself look a fool, basically, every single time he opens his mouth. Now, in his defense, he will say that he's teached his backside to be where his mouth is. So the crap that's coming out of this particular passage is the normal crap that comes out of his anal passage, so it is understandable. Maybe.
Well, let me talk about a big issue, another big issue, I should say, in your state, the issue of fracking. I know you've talked about this quite a bit. Vice President Harris, as you know, once supported a ban on fracking when she was running for president in 2020. She even sued the Obama administration to prevent fracking off California's coast. Now she says she will not ban the practice as president. Why should voters trust that that is really what the vice president believes?
It's so strange why we just keep talking about fracking. Back in 2020, I said that that might be an issue, but it's not going to be a defining issue. And now in 2024, we're still trying to talk about fracking. And now the other side, they're talking about eating cats and geese and dogs and saying absurd things and talking about how if Trump doesn't win, he said that, you have to blame the Jews on that, and just absurd things. Like having a serious policy conversation when the other side is just just absolutely on fire. And here's where we are. And here we are also that it's going to be very close in Pennsylvania, and it's not going to be defined by fracking.
Well, we are talking about it because, of course, it supported 120,000 jobs back in 2022. Let me read you some of what you have said about fracking. In 2016, you called it a stain on Pennsylvania. In 2018, you said you don't support fracking at all. But then in 2022, you said you absolutely support fracking. Senator, what exactly do you like about fracking now?
It's strange for some weird gotcha, kind of taking quotes out of context. And, you know, here I am now. I'm a United States Senator, and I won by 5 points, a record margin back in 22. And again, it might be an issue in fracking, and I fully support fracking. So does the Vice President Harris. And now, if you want to have a serious conversation about policy, then I would challenge Trump and Vance to have one other than talking about eating pets.
And we'll have plenty of questions for Senator Lindsey Graham. There's no doubt about that. But to the point, what do you now like about fracking? You say you're not going to ban it. You support it now.
They're eating dogs. They're eating cats. You know, again, so, okay. Yes. And any more on fracking? I think.
Well,
for years. It is a very close election. 63 days ago, Chuck Schumer led a coup to overthrow Joe Biden, and he's telling me or any other Republican what we should be doing. If they change the law in Nebraska, it won't be on the phone in the middle of the night. It will be through a democratic process. The entire federal delegation of Nebraska, House members and 2 senators, want this change. To my friends in Nebraska, that one electoral vote could be the difference between Harris being president or not, and she's a disaster for Nebraska and the world.
I hear you're calling it a coup. Of course, Democrats have the right to change who's at the top of their ticket.
So does Nebraska.
Very quickly, before we get to the Middle East, what do you think the chances are? What's the over-under that this change actually happens in Nebraska?
50-50, down to 2 people.
Okay.
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
Watch the clip again, and I'm going to ask you a very, very special favour. Can you caption it better than me? The best I can do is beyond parody. In case you're thinking, what is this story all about? Okay, Mark Robinson, who is, well, to say he's controversial, to say he's full of SHIT is an understatement. To say he's a full-on homophobe, doesn't even really like black people. Understatement. He's been caught within a sex scandal where he's been doing and saying all types of really derogative, sexist stuff against women. But for somebody who's so transphobic publicly, privately, has been enjoying a life that, you know, if you are of trans, that's the life you're entitled to enjoy. And he's been on a lot of, how should we say, forums, that sort of thing, thoroughly indulging in trans porn, which as an individual, he's more than freely able to do. Although publicly, he's the most anti-nastiest piece of individual person you're likely to find in North Carolina. So, J.D. Vance is asked for his opinion, specifically because Trump was in North Carolina, and can you believe it? He managed in an hour and a bit not to mention Mark Robinson once, and to refuse to do any interviews because he's going to be asked about it. And bearing in mind, this is the same individual that Trump referred to, I quote, as a bigger contribution to, I'm paraphrasing really, bigger contribution to political life, political history. He actually said Mark Robinson is like Martin Luther King on steroids. So, back to J.D. Vance. Can you, in the comment section below now, come up with a better caption than beyond parody?
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
Have you heard the latest about North Carolina Republican candidate for governor Mark Robinson? It's all true. He's been seen in public with a convicted felon. Not just any felon, but a felon who's found liable for sexual assault by his hometown jury. He even praises the felon.
On this stage today, I am endorsing Donald J. Trump as the President of the United States of America.
a weirdo. He loves the felon, and the felon loves the weirdo.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids.
Everything you've heard about Mark Robinson and Donald Trump is true. They deserve each other. But North Carolina and America deserve better.
It was predictable. Mark Robinson's tenure in public life has shown erratic, sometimes highly offensive statements over and over again. And Donald Trump supported him and endorsed him. In fact, called him better than Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids.
That's right.
All right. So this was predictable. And this is the problem for us Republicans. As long as Donald Trump is your recruiting agent for candidates in swing states, we're going to continue to get our rear ends handed to us. And Mark Robinson is not going to win this race, can't win this race.
He's about 10, 12 points behind.
Right. And he's running against, by the way, a very formidable candidate in the Attorney General, Josh Stein.
Right.
So the fact is this was going to be a tough race no matter what. And the problem for them now, George, is how much will it affect the top of the ticket?
And I want to ask Donna about...
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
This was predictable. Mark Robinson's tenure in public life has shown erratic, sometimes highly offensive statements over and over again. And Donald Trump supported him and endorsed him. In fact, called him better than Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids.
That's right.
All right. So this was predictable. And this is the problem for us Republicans. As long as Donald Trump is your recruiting agent for candidates in swing states, we're going to continue to get our rear ends handed to us. And Mark Robinson is not going to win this race, can't win this race.
He's about 10, 12 points behind.
Right. And he's running against, by the way, a very formidable candidate in the Attorney General, Josh Stein.
Right.
So the fact is this was going to be a tough race no matter
Attorney
what.
General Stein, so obviously
and
on
the
this
problem
online
for them now, George, is how much will it affect the top of the ticket?
And I want to ask Donna about...
content. He called himself a black Nazi. He expressed support for slavery. He talked about peeping on women in the showers when he was a teenager. It goes on. That's just the stuff, by the way, I can say on TV. Robinson has denied the post, saying, quote, "These are not our words, and this is not anything that is characteristic of me," unquote. Do you believe his denial?
Ours is forward-leaning and welcoming.
I don't.
It is about
if you look at what he said on the post, it was in keeping on what he has said publicly on Facebook that are still on his Facebook page. Mark Robinson is absolutely unfit to be the governor of North Carolina. And that was true before your story broke last Thursday. The story has only served to underline and put an exclamation point on that fact. I mean, he embraced Hitler. He compliments Hitler. He says he's a Nazi. He buys little toy SS soldiers. I mean, he says slavery, he wants to bring it back. Things that defy comprehension. But those only are in keeping with what he has said throughout his entire public life. He says women are not called to lead and they have abortions because they cannot keep their skirts down. He says that gay people are filth and even more vile insults than that. Teachers are wicked people. From a church pulpit this summer, he yelled, "Some folks need killing." This man is utterly unqualified, unfit to be the governor of North Carolina, and we're going to do everything in our power to keep that from happening.
So he wants to slash, that's his verb, not mine, public school funding. He wants to make it harder for people to vote, and he wants to completely ban abortion in this state with no exceptions. Not for rape, not for incest, not even for the life of the mother. He is a self-described conspiracy theorist. He denies the 2020 election results. He denies the climate crisis. He even denies the Holocaust. Friends, we must deny him the governorship of North Carolina.
He wrote all of this stuff years ago before he got into politics. How are you sure that it's him?
Yeah, so CNN, Jake, we found that Robinson consistently used that same username, Mini Soldier, that he used on Nude Africa in all of his social media. You can see it here. He used it on Pinterest, Black Planet, YouTube. He even used it as his Twitter handle. His full name was also listed on Nude Africa, and an email we found he used on Nude Africa, he used on several other websites. Now, the biographical data from multiple websites using the name Mini Soldier matches Robinson exactly, the exact date of birth, his hometown, the fact that his mother worked at an HBCU, that his favorite episode of The Twilight Zone is number 22.
And of course, this was all before he was a public figure, which would factor into the identification that this all happened back then when he was just a common citizen. So what?
When I say a parallel universe, I really am serious in terms of the world we all live in, which Kamala Harris lives in terms of the questions she's asked, how she's interrogated, every single thing she does and says is analysed. Yet with the former losing President of the United States of America, it's like a separate world. Like, nobody says anything. The fact that he goes to North Carolina, avoids doing any interviews, avoids talking about Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson doesn't even turn up on stage. Yet, hardly anybody says anything about it at all. These practices are crazy. The person who goes on stage, today he was so anti-Semitic it is untrue. How dare he say this will be the end of Israel if he doesn't get in? It is just not true. If there are people who believe that, I would love them to go right now to the Israeli embassy in America, right, and say to them, ask them their opinion if they think that's true. It's gobbledygook. Yet he comes out with it and nobody says a blind thing. It's a very, very strange scenario. I always thought that politicians like to be judged on who they are and what they stand for. The former president of the United States of America, one loser guy, is literally trying to erase his footprint as he walks. Let me give you the best example of that, being Mark Robertson, the North Carolina buffoon, clown, whatever word you want to use. Toe rag is probably the best description I can think of off the top of my head. Trump was in North Carolina today, and surprise, shock, guess who wasn't back? Guess who wasn't there? Guess who wouldn't do any interviews? Nothing. The same person that's been accusing Kamala Harris of saying nothing suddenly has lost his voice. Got nothing to say. In fact, the cliche, can we do the drum roll? Pretty bad drum roll. The cliche, I hardly know him, I think is about to be spun out. And this, to me, it sums it all up in terms of, I keep on saying, there's a parallel universe in operation.
She wants to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles. She's already banned them. And what a shame that is, right? What a shame that is. And you see how bad it's getting when you look at what's going on with the migrants attacking villages and cities all throughout the Midwest in particular right now, but it's all over. To do it in Minneapolis. That's why she picked this character, this weird guy. You know, he said weird. JD and I are not weird. We got a lot of problems, but we're not weird. I said, is that my beautiful Eric? But it is, and he's still beautiful, and he's smart, and he is tough, and he's handled it so well. Eric, stand up separately. Come on. He is the most subpoenaed man in the history of our country. He got more subpoenas than the late, great Al Capone. Al Capone is like a baby compared to Eric. Thanks, Eric. Good. Great job, honey. Great job. I said, is that my beautiful Eric? But it is, and he's still beautiful, and he's smart, and he is tough, and he's handled it so well. Eric, stand up separately. Come on. He is the most subpoenaed man in the history of our country. He got more subpoenas than the late, great Al Capone. Al Capone is like a baby compared to Eric. Thanks, Eric. Good. Great job, honey. Great job. And at long last, this national nightmare that we're going through will be over. Women will be happy, healthy, confident, and free. You will no longer be thinking about abortion because it is now where it always had to be, with the states and with the
swept up in the partisan noise, that really sticks with people longer than a regular political ad or rally or speech might. I mean, it's horrific when we're seeing the exact thing that folks warned about before Roe was overturned, which was that women would die because they would be denied care that they needed in order to live, that is now a reality. And Donald Trump is not even in the White House. Imagine if he is reelected. And that is the argument that Democrats are making every time they tell the story of what happened, not just to these women in Georgia, but all around the country.
So, Dasha, Springfield, Ohio, still grappling with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's repeated lies about Haitian migrants eating pets. Now that it's been debunked and denied by a list of Ohio officials, including its Republican governor, is the Trump campaign trying at all to pivot away from this, or does Trump still plan to visit Springfield in the coming weeks?
It's funny you asked that. I've been listening out for exactly that, and he hasn't mentioned it at this rally so far. But they've really doubled down, even amid all of the criticism, even amid all of the response from local officials in Springfield, Ohio, talking about how much damage this is doing to the community there. This is something that is a strategy for former President Trump. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't back away. He doubles down on anything that's deemed scandalous. But this is one that's really having a tangible impact and is distracting from an issue that should be a winning issue for him. You saw Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine this week write an op-ed saying as much, saying to by the way, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and former President Trump, saying, look, I'm a fan of them, I like them, I want them to win, but this is not the way to go and to talk about immigration, which is an issue where you could have real success here. So that's where it's at. We'll take a listen and see if he mentions it again. But he's getting a lot of advice from people within his own party that this is not how you frame the issue of immigration successfully, Alex.
Okay. Can I just say, Dasha, I think Alexei must join me in applauding your ability to keep your thought process, keep going when you have Donald Trump in his rhetoric.
Before we go any further this Saturday, can we just deal with cheating in debates? Trump, well, the Trumpy Trumps have been saying that whenever Trump does a debate, his opposition is, well, given an advantage. I wonder how he would explain this then. Republican Derek Anderson in VA, see what happens.
Beholden to swear an oath of fealty to the president. And it could be a Republican, it could be a Democrat, and frankly, it's unacceptable. It weakens us in national security because what it does is you're replacing experts with political hacks. I have some knowledge of that because I worked in the previous administration in the National Security Council. I've seen what that does to national security. And these are experts that have...
Should we just rerun that in slow motion? Looks like he was slipped a note during the debate from his handler. Cheating.